Welcome, everybody, to the Ancient Angels podcast. This is the third episode. And today we've got a wonderful surprise. We're going to ruin Christmas.
For some, maybe.
Not for everybody. No, we're facetious, but we're going to teach you the origins of the Nephilim in regards to Christmas, because surprisingly, Christmas is a very heavily Nephilim-centric origin story that most people are not aware of. And so this plays back into the understanding of all kinds of different things that should be interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about the elves and a little bit about the elves and maybe the Elohim and aliens, or I should say aliens. Yeah, we're going to break this down so that way people can begin to see the bigger picture of what's going on. Are you excited to ruin Christmas, JJT?
Like I said, I remember we did a podcast about this last year, and I feel like that I'm just going to come right out and say at the beginning that I understand that biblically, it said that to some people, some days are holy, some people celebrate certain feasts, some people celebrate certain festivals, and these are faith issues. So my goal is not to ruin Christmas for anybody, because full disclosure is, obviously I go to family events that are Christmas celebrations. And
I'm not
going to be a hypocrite in that way. But I think the reason Paul says that is because he mentions specifically in Corinthians when he's saying that I was a Jew under the law to the people who were under the law, and I was free to when I was with the Gentiles, I was not under the law. And He's not saying he has to live by a different standard, but what he's trying to say is he's trying to reach people where they're at. And I know that these things are a matter of the heart. And so if you're celebrating Jesus on December 25th or Christmas Eve, then yeah.
Celebrate Jesus.
Celebrate Jesus. Celebrate Jesus every day. But if you want to take a moment to tell the nativity story, the story of Jesus' birth, and all the miraculous things that happen. Yeah, I think that's worth celebrating. It's funny how I do have a more soft spot for Christmas as far as which holiday's pagan versus Easter.
Because I think a lot of people do, because it does tend to lean heavily towards a family interaction.
Right.
And community.
The Easter thing is offensive to me because I would say that if there was no Christmas, we would not celebrate the birth of Jesus at all. Right? But if there was no Easter, we could still celebrate the resurrection at Passover weekend. So I would say that's why I always kind of I think, the Christmas songs are good. I think the ones that are about the real story are good. First off, though, I don't believe December 25th is his birthday, and we'll get more into that. But I do think that because, the Bible really does not give you, after the Jewish feasts and festivals, it really does not give you what's a Christian holiday, right? There isn't one. There isn't one mentioned. Obviously, they break bread and they have communion when they gather together, but that's not even once a month like lots of churches do. It just says when you gather together, break bread and do this in remembrance of me. But there's no festivals and feasts mentioned post the cross and resurrection. So I think it's interesting that what days people decide are holy and which days are worth remembering.
Well, there's a verse I got to read about that in Jubilees.
Okay.
So, and by the way, guys, for this episode, if you've ever seen an episode on Christmas being bad or pagan or whatever, watch this episode, okay? Because this is going to blow your mind. Honestly, the stuff that I'm in here, JT probably doesn't even know some of it. I'm going to bust it out, and it's going to open your eyes in ways that you're whoa. I'm going to tell you I have found, digging through old text, the oldest account of the story of where Christmas stemmed from, and it is completely Nephilimized, and it's fascinating. But this isn't to judge people ever, okay? You don't know this information to go point fingers at your friends and go, "How dare you, Christian? You do that!" Never, ever, ever, ever are you to do that. Your own convictions you hold to yourself. And actually, I want to start off. I want to read Colossians 2, just so that way everybody gets this understanding. We're not to go off the rails and be we can't celebrate Christmas. We can't have family. That's stupid. Okay. That's stupid. Okay, and Colossians 2 is what JT is referring to, but it says freedom from human rules. Therefore, do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or what regard to a religious festival or a new moon celebration or Sabbath day. These are shadows of the things that were to come. The reality, however, is found in Christ. Do not let anyone who delights in false humility and the worship of angels disqualify you. Such a person also goes into great detail about what they have seen. They have puffed up with idle notions by the unspiritual mind. Okay, we're just because we're giving you facts and we're giving you history and we're giving you stuff. Do not be puffed up with your unspiritual mind. You got to recognize things in the spirit. Okay, they have lost connection with the head, from whom the whole body is supported and held together by its ligaments, and sinews grows as God causes it to grow. Okay, since you died with Christ to the elemental spiritual forces of this world, okay, why, as though you still belong to the world, do you submit to its rules? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. These rules, which have to do with things that are all destined to perish with use, are based on merely human commands and teachings. Such regulations indeed have an appearance of wisdom with their self-imposed worship, their false humility, and their harsh treatment of the body, but they lack any value in restraining sensual indulgences. Now, it's very important that reading that, you notice how it says, do not taste, do not touch, do not, these things are irrelevant. They're writing. They're irrelevant. Like, so if you want to put a Christmas tree up, go for it. Honestly, like, if you don't feel convicted or anything, like, whatever, dude, it's irrelevant. Okay, I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm going to tell you the origins of it. And if you feel convicted and you still put it up, okay, now that's something between you and the Lord, because what is a sin for you is different than what is a sin for me, by the way. Side note. People don't understand that. Like, it is based off of your heart and your convictions. So don't do anything that goes against your convictions, but never push your convictions onto other people. Okay, like, you're not to do that. That's not Christian. Okay, and that's the reason why we got a bunch of people that are non-Christians hate Christians, because of this behavior. You push your convictions onto other people, bro. It's your conviction. It's not, the Bible tells you this. Okay, clearly. So since then you have been raised with Christ, set your heart on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature: sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Because of these things, the wrath of God is coming. You used to walk in these ways in the life you once lived, but now you must also rid yourself of all such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, filthy language from your lips. Do not let each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices, and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in the knowledge of the image of its creator. Here there is no Gentile or Jew, circumcised, uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave or free, but Christ is all and is in all. Okay, so literally, it's right there, clarifies none of these things matter. What matters more is how you treat people, bro. Anger, rage, malice, slander, these are the things you need to get rid of. And it is not loving. It is not, it's evil to command somebody and condemn them. So it is of the utmost importance to grasp this understanding that this verse is explaining. Okay, so don't push your views. But anyways, that's basically the warning before we get into this.
I think it's very important to say that, because that's like I said, the more I read, the more I understand. It's like that they were under a law, and obviously the law did not save anyone. It condemned everyone, and obviously apart from Christ, we would all be condemned because we could not be good enough. We couldn't keep the rules well enough to go to heaven. So what he's saying specifically is, like, you can't try to legalize everything. This is about legalization of everything, legalism. You can't do this. You can't touch. You can't taste. You can't do this. And it's like we have freedom in Christ. All things are lawful, not all things are profitable. So what he's really saying is he's like saying, don't do this, do not hate, do not lust, do not do. He's talking about things of the heart. So that's the difference between the certain things are law and certain things are faith issues. So if you're you have this evil intent in your heart, that is what's damnable.
That's wicked.
Not the outside action. So even Jesus says, not what goes in the mouth defiles somebody, it's what comes out of it, because that's where the heart flows. So all the wicked things you would say comes from a heart condition. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to try to say right here is that do not let people say, because I learned this thing about Christmas, now you can't celebrate it. And that's when people will come to us and say, well, can we do this? Can we do this? It's like, no, that's not what it's about. I do believe, in the same way that I would say the reason I would still go to family gatherings for Christmas is that I believe that use all things together for the good. You try to use these opportunities to love people, to reach people where they're at, and to not be a weirdo. I think the part of being a Christian and evangelizing to people is that you can do these things and you're trying to connect with people and you're trying to be available to them. And so trying to say the whole world's evil, so therefore I'm going to completely resign myself. I'm going to go hide in a cave or something. It's I don't think that's what he wants you to do. He's he wants you to be able to be available to people. And obviously the holidays, whether they're holy or not, are some of the best times to be able to be available to, because isn't it interesting how a lot of people mention that though Christmas is supposed to be this joyous time of year, a lot of people are really depressed and we really need each other during this time.
Yeah, there's a lot of suicide stuff. And guys, it's all about love, guys. That's why Jesus says comes down to love. It's if you love your neighbor as yourself and you love one another, bro, when we call out celebrities or call out things, we're only calling them out in love. We're not calling them out to condemn them. We're calling them out to be hey, bro, you need to fix this or change this or whatever. And so I don't even like calling people out. But just know that, guys, you are held to the law that's written on your heart. There is no physical law. There's no, you can't do this. You can't do that, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The only law that you're held to now is the law that is written on your heart. Okay. Hebrews 8:10 talks about this kind of stuff. And you understand that it's your heart is what Jesus is looking at. Your heart is what God is looking at. He's your heart. Where was your heart when you did the things you did? It's no longer just a paper law written. You can't do this, because what if you accidentally slip up and did it? God now evaluates you based on your heart. That being said, now we can jump into this. Okay, that's the warning before we get into this, because after you hear this information, you might be like, whoa, this is very wicked and weird and strange. But I'm going to point out one verse real quick. Jubilees 6:37. Now, Jubilees is an extra biblical text. I believe it's pretty sound in a lot of ways. It's got some very deep truths in it. This is a very fascinating verse in it. Okay, check this out. Jubilees 6:37. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disrupt the order and make an abominable day the day of testimony, and an unclean day a feast day. And they will confound all the days, the holy with the unclean, and the unclean with the holy days. For they will go wrong as to the months, the Sabbaths, the feasts, and the Jubilees. Isn't that fascinating? What do you think about that one?
No, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, of course, again, even it's fascinating because obviously we talk about they're going wrong about the days and the years and the feasts and the Jubilees. They don't understand the time and the time or the season they're living in. As Paul and I just did a podcast, a detailed breakdown of that Gunnar Heinsohn's theory that they added 700 years to the first millennia. We certainly are in a time where we're unsure about when we live and what we're supposed to do, what we're supposed to celebrate, which again, I think that in some ways it's a good thing because it is we have freedom that we're not held to that. But I wonder in Jubilees, I'm not sure if you know, Brian, but I know that Jubilees kind of corresponds with the book of Genesis. Well, in the book of Genesis, they weren't under the law. So what feasts are they even talking about in that feast and festival? Because it doesn't ever mention any feasts and festivals in that.
Yeah, I don't
I mean,
know.
it doesn't mention that until, to the laws given.
That's interesting. That's a very interesting point to mention. Yeah, it's strange when you find I don't know, inconsistencies or something. Who knows?
Well, I don't
But
know. I mean, Jubilees has got some weird things in it. It's like, I
it
mean, there's
does.
some
It
sort.
does have some stuff
It
that's
does.
totally
It does
off.
have some stuff where it's like, I wonder if some of it's true, some of it's fragmented. But it is interesting, like that was nobody celebrating anything before the law and stuff. I mean, I believe that they were. So, like, what were they celebrating? Before Moses gave them the things to remember, or God gave them the things to remember, like the Passover and all the trumpets and the day of the tabernacles and all that stuff. It's interesting to think like what the godly men were doing before.
Yeah,
What were they
absolutely.
celebrating?
Very fascinating to think about it. Okay, guys. So here's the thing. I'm going to talk about the oldest context that I found of Santa Claus. Okay, this is the oldest writing stuff that I was able to find, and I don't know if I should share my screen. Maybe I don't know. But let me first off, guys. Here, I'm going to show you this. So this is a book that I created here, Ancient Angels: The Origins of Christmas Traditions. Okay, and it's
The holiday special.
yeah, this has been updated, and it will be. I don't know if I'm gonna like maybe sell it on Amazon or something, or put it on my website and you can just download it and maybe I'll ship them out or something. I don't know.
Well, if you want to celebrate Brian's work in the research he's done, yeah, obviously,
Yeah,
Brian, you should put a link in the description
for
if you
sure.
want the book, and maybe you can have like a donation thing of like what people want to give, or you can
Yeah.
charge
I
what you
can.
want.
Yeah. I can make it however. Yeah. And so anyway, so this will eventually be somewhere where you guys can access it because it's got a lot of images like this, which I don't know if you guys know about old Saint Nick right here, who's Old Nick. It's his name for the devil, by the way. And then you see these depictions with the Druid version of Old Nick, which comes from, and then there's Santa Claus, and here's the robe, the Freemason robe, that the red robe. I don't know if that's like, it's not in focus, but the Freemason robe stuff here, that it happens to be a connection to Santa Claus. And then the green, and then it went to the red when Coca-Cola took it over, which is fascinating why Coca-Cola even uses Santa Claus as their mascot. There's a much deeper reason for that, actually. And so, because Santa Claus was also known as the man that kidnaps children, see him taking children in these old photos, and he came from a really old story in Basque tradition called Olentzero. And so Olentzero, which Olent means old and zero means nothing. Old Nick means nothing. Old Nick is old nothingness. Okay. Olentzero means old nothingness. It's the same word. Okay. Old Nick is the name for the devil. Old Saint Nick is the name for Satan or Santa. Okay. It's the same name he's had. Olentzero is the original name for the original Santa Claus, guys. This I'm telling you right now. And it's a Basque tradition. And Olentzero, I'm going to tell you what he is. He was a Gentile giant. Okay. He was a Gentile, is what he is called. And they're called, or Gentil, we'll call them. And it's this hairy, tall, giant thing. This is a Gentil, and this is Olentzero. They don't depict him as a hairy beast in this depiction, but he is original from the descendants of the Gentil. Okay. And who are the Gentil? Okay. We're going to talk about what the Gentil are. The Gentil are a race of people in the Basque tradition, which Basque people are the place between France and Spain. Okay, they have the highest percentage of Rh negative blood, by the way, side note. So when people want to look into what Rh negative blood is, you're going to find some interesting. And actually, the word Ford comes from this. So JT Ford knows part of these things. So the word Ford comes from these beings that were so big they could ford across water, is what they would say. And
It's
they
like
would
ford,
be,
like fjord.
yeah,
Fjord
but
is like a river.
yes, exactly. And so it meant they could walk across the water they would walk across the ocean and the rivers without going under the water because they were so big. Okay. And so this is actually where some of the stuff comes from. But if you look up the historical context of the Gentil or the Gentiloch, okay, the Gentiloch is literally a race of giant hairy people in the Basque tradition. They were so hairy and they were so big and they were so strong that they actually fought off the Frankish army when it came to invade that area. And this is why the Basque people today are a people without a country. It's the only culture in the world that have no, they're a group of people. They don't have a country. They live in the region between France and Spain, and they call themselves Basque. And they say, hey, we're not either French or Spaniards. Okay. And they came in to like take over the area, and they fought off the Frankish army by throwing rocks at them. I think it was Roxphenox or something, Battle of Roxphenox or something, I think. And they threw rocks at them, and they defeated the entire army. How big of rocks do you think these people in the mountains threw that was able to defeat an entire army? Some pretty big rocks.
You know what's interesting is that, just to interject real quickly, I believe that there is a really interesting story when the Spanish were trying to conquer the Aztecs, that there was some kind of a giant they had that literally was hurling boulders at the conquistadors. Did you ever heard that one, Brian?
I haven't, but I completely would agree with that theory.
Well, isn't it kind of ironic a little bit that the fact that you're talking about there's these giants from Spain, France, Spain area, and then the Spanish are going over to conquer people, natives to Mexico, and they're encountering this giant that's making it really difficult for them to take this city because he's literally like a freak of nature. And that's actually in the mythology. I mean, like that's in like very detailed notes of the Spanish when they came over. So it's not, they have no reason to lie about something like that, I wouldn't think.
No, they wouldn't. I would imagine not. But check this out, guys. So here is your original story. The Jentil, or Gentiloc, with the Basque plural, are a race of giants in Basque mythology. The word meaning gentle, from the Latin gentilis, okay, was used to refer to pre-Christian civilization. They were pre-Christian, okay? Notice that because when Jesus showed up, these things all went and committed suicide. And in particular to the builders of the megalithic mounds, to which the Basque mythology legends of the Marquer are involved to. So the Gentil were believed to have lived alongside the Basque people. They were hairy and were so tall that they could walk in the sea and throw rocks from mountains to another. One mountain to another. There's the forward word, by the way. This is stone throwing has led to several tales and explanations of ancient stone builders and large isolated rocks. Even the Basque game Poleta is described as these stone throwers. The tradition lives on in the Basque power games of stone lifting and throwing. Some attribute the Gentil to the defeat of Roland in the Battle of Roncesvalles, okay, where the Basque defeated the Frankish army by throwing rocks on them. The giants were believed to have created Neolithic mounds, okay, so the Neolithic mounds that you see all over the place, such as the dolmen, okay, these things right here that look like tall tables, which is literally just tables for giants to eat people on, by the way. Live. No. These are tables where they would like grind up your bones to make their bread, by the way. And that's because they couldn't. Yeah, that's what this is. Found around the Basque countryside. They have also said to have invented metallurgy. Oh, wait a second. We're sounding a little Nephilim here, aren't we? And the saw and the first to grow wheat, teaching humans to farm. However, they were unwilling to move into the valleys and the mountains. With certain unwillingness to progress, they disappeared into the earth under the dolmen in the Arazin Valley. Okay, wherein a pretentious luminous cloud, perhaps a star, how about like the Star of Bethlehem, appeared, said to have heralded the birth of Christ and the end of the Gentile age. Other stories said the Gentil threw themselves from mountains. Only Olentzero remained, a giant who appeared at Christmas in the reproduced in as straw dolls. Okay,
that is so weird.
Oh, bro, this is crazy when you realize what's really going on. And so, like, because now they invented metallurgy. What does it say in the Book of Enoch? It says, What did the giants do? The giants invented metallurgy.
It says their fathers would have taught men the art of war and making metals and swords and beautifying
planting.
eyelids and all the weird, all the things.
They were the first to grow wheat. They taught them farming as well. The giants did. And so again, the Jentil, okay, the Gentillock, these people are literally the giant. They are the descendants of the Nephilim. They're Jentil as in giantile. Okay? Giantile descendants. That's what these things are. Giantile. It doesn't mean Gentil doesn't mean non-Jew necessarily. It means, you ever heard the expression gentle giant? It's not gentle giant, it's Gentile giant. Okay, Gentile giant. It means non-Jew. It doesn't necessarily mean non-Jew. It means non-human. It means descendants of Nephilim. It means descendants of these things. Okay, so this is what this comes from. And when you understand the original origin story of this, Olentzero, this guy right here, who is this dude, giant, reproducing straw dolls, when you find out what he was, his real story, it talks a little bit more about the Gentile and their thing. You should read this page about Christmas. This is where all this Christmas origin stuff comes from. Okay, it's all Nephilim connected, guys. Olenta means old, and Zero means nothingness. Old nothingness. That's his name. Old Saint Nick. This is the original Santa Claus right here, guys. This is the old nothingness. And he was and now, why did he come at that time? Why did he come at Christmas? And this is what's important to know. He came at Christmas because all of the other Jentil or Nephilim-esque people, when they saw the birth of Christ, they went and threw themselves off of mountains and committed suicide. They all went and killed themselves. Okay, they murdered themselves because they knew the prophecy spoken about that Satan's seed, their heads will get crushed and they will bruise the heels. So they saw the star of Bethlehem and said, "Oh shoot, that's the Son of God coming to crush our head. Let's go kill ourselves." And the only one that remained is Olentzero, who thought, as opposed to suicide, maybe I could just bring gifts and maybe they won't crush my head and kill me. And so his idea was literally, he was too scared to commit suicide. He went out of the hills and went hiding to avoid being killed. And then he would show up with gifts and bear gifts. And this is where we get into, I don't know, how does it share both of our faces when I screen share on this app?
You can, well, you have to edit it a certain way. Like, obviously, okay. I can send a certain kind of edit.
Okay, well, that's fine. So then I'll just stop. So after this, he came, and this is why. What else were the giants known for, JT? They did what to humans? What did they do to humans?
They ate them.
They ate them. Oh, they kidnapped humans and ate them. Oh, is that why Santa Claus is known for taking children? Isn't that funny? And the old things. And what did happen? It was like, so they knew that the Jentil that would drink the blood and eat children or humans, and the Jentil in this Basque tradition, some of them were friendly, but in other traditions, you'll actually read that they were not friendly and that they were eating people. Okay, and then when they saw the Star of Bethlehem, they went and committed suicide. And then Olentzero comes every Christmas bringing gifts saying, "Please don't kill me. I won't do anything bad." And then the people were like, "Hey, if you're a bad child, we'll feed you to Olentzero when he shows up."
He's got a list. He's checking it twice.
Yeah, this is why he's watching you when you're sleeping, bro, because he is a demon, bro. And so the depiction of him being hairy, what's that sound like to you? Who's that? Oh yeah, Krampus taking children.
Is it Krampus or Krampus?
It doesn't matter either way. Krampus. This is who this is. This is the depiction of the hairy, because what else did the Nephilim do? Oh yeah, they hybridized with humans and animals.
And he's got that weird tongue where it's like, obviously it's very sexual looking, kind of like.
Yeah. Ugh. Yes. And so like this is Krampus hybridizing, taking children, beating them. So the parents were like, "Hey, if you misbehave, we're going to feed you to the hairy giant thing that's like, got horns and he's animal mixed hybrid thing." This is where the stories of Krampus comes in. But then they also portrayed it as a good guy because he's coming bringing gifts in fear of not being murdered, guys. The original Olentzero brought gifts because he was afraid Christ was going to kill him. This is why they brought gifts, guys. This is why they brought gifts. Not because of some other weird reason of like being thankful. No, he was literally like, "Please don't murder me. Don't crush my head," like Genesis says. Like, just take the gifts and then feed me your children. If they're bad, I'll take care of your children for you, because he's a demon. Ultimately, he's a Nephilim hybrid leftover.
Let me ask you a question, Brian, because this just came to me. Like, is this a situation where there's two entities, right? You have the good one, who's Santa Claus, and then you had the bad one, who's Krampus, but they're really just the same. They're just one entity. And so, like, if you're good, you get good. You get rewarded for being good, and if you're bad, you get kidnapped and obviously all the bad things that go along with that. It's there. The story involved into eventually the Krampus character in America does not exist, and so it's just a good thing. And so then it's like, obviously it's palatable for everybody, but like the other story is like, you can't sell that to Christians. You could sell a Saint Nicholas, but you could certainly not, because everybody would know this other story is like, yeah, that's not biblical at all. That's evil. Why would we be celebrating the birth of Jesus and also this demon who eats people and does wicked things at the same time? Like, that would not. You could not sell it to Christians. Well, maybe the current batch of the church, but like for centuries, yeah, they would have said, no, that's of the devil. And they would have been right.
Because he was of the devils. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what does Santa work with? He works with elves, because they're elves, because they're Elohims. He works with the other Elohims. Okay. This is Santa is Satan. Okay. That's where the name is. Old Nick means old nothing. To nick something off, that means not nix it. Right. So the word Nick in Latin, it comes from nothingness. So old Nick, it means old nothingness. That's what this comes from. He is the worthless bad guy. Like, that's why they say this about him. And this is why Coca-Cola actually adapted Saint Nick as their brand. And this gets even weirder, guys, but hang on, because Coca-Cola comes from the kukui. And the kukui is the original Jentil kidnapper. Okay, guys? So when it comes to kukui, so you guys heard the word cocoa or kukui or whatever these things are? Cocoa, demon. I got to show you this, actually. Demon, Coco.
What was that? Didn't they, Disney, or is it Pixar? Or I guess Pixar, Disney owns Pixar now, but didn't they do a movie called Coco?
They sure did.
Yeah, like a few years ago.
They absolutely did. In fact, Coco is in a whole lot of traditions, and people don't know what Coco is, but this is the Coco, okay? It's folklore, supposedly. Or El Coco, or El Kukui, okay? He's got multiple names. Coco, Coca, known as Kukui, Coco, Coca, Cuckoo, Cookie, okay? El Kukui, okay? This is a mythical ghost-like monster equivalent to the boogeyman, found in Spain and Portugal. It's also found in multiple other cultures. Those that believe to have spread in many Hispaphone and countries, Latin countries. Okay, and it also be considered an Iberian version of the bugbear. Okay, so what this is, I'm going to explain this to you. Coco, or El Cucuy, for those that know, is also depicted as a dragon. Isn't that funny? Like, he's also this, which is the hairy beast thing, okay? And El Cucuy actually gets his name from coconut, because he was a hairy, brown, large, hairy, like a coconut creature that would come and kidnap children. Okay, this was the El Cucuy. He was a kidnapper. Okay, he was like Pan, come in and kidnaps children and takes them away. This is the Cucuy that cocaine is named after, by the way. Cocaine is named after this. So Coca-Cola, you think, is named after cocaine? No, Coca-Cola is actually named after the Cucuy, who kidnaps and takes children. The brown hairy monster beast that looks a little bit like Krampus, don't it? Looks a little bit like Santa, who is the original Cucuy who kidnaps children. And what do you leave for Santa? What do you leave him? Milk and what?
Yeah, milk and cookies.
And cookies. Yeah, Cucuys. That's cookies. It's an etymological like homage to the cookie monster, which, by the way, is not the Cookie Monster because he just likes cookies. Cookie Monster is the Cookie Monster because he's the Kukui. He's a hairy beast that kidnaps children, guys. This is what the real Kukui is.
Brian,
What's
you got to see this. You got to.
Show me.
I got to. Okay, can you stop screen share? I got to show you this character from the movie Coco. So Coco is like has something to do with like the Mexican Day of the Dead thing, like. And so one of the characters, you want to see one of the characters in this thing?
Show me.
This is you can find this interesting.
Oh wow, that's the Beast of Revelation chilling in the cocoa.
pretty
what is that?
I mean, pretty much. Here's what it says about this character in the movie. It says the character's name is Pepita. Is a cross between a jaguar and a cougar and an eagle and several other different animals. But it actually says Pepita is an opposing albrea who functions as some sort of spiritual guide for Almeida. She cannot speak. Instead, she can only make animal-like roars and noises. And it says something about it being a spiritual guide based on their ancestors.
Wait, so this is a good character? In the movie, in the movie Coco.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is hilarious. Like this is so blatantly in your face. Like, dude, oh my gosh.
Yeah, you guys know, like I said, that I mean, obviously the beasts that are described in the book of Daniel and also Revelation are very bizarre. And this is, it's interesting. My very first kind of like hit TikTok was about like the beast statue that was in front of the UN. And so this is what they said it was patterned after, not the Bible, but this. But obviously, this is patterned off after the beasts that are in the Bible. So, so ultimately, yes, this is all about the same thing. I mean, obviously, it's a spiritual entity, and of course, when it's mentioning ancestors in this movie, Coco, the ancestors are the Nephilim. The ancestors are either the Nephilim or they're their divine family who are eventually angels. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I just don't associate Coco with like Mexican Day of the Dead mythology. But I mean, obviously, it's all there. That movie is obviously not it's not for kids. It's totally bizarre, and obviously, these are such odd connections. But the fact that it does all kind of fit together, I'm sure you guys have to ask yourself, like, that whole story about the Gentiles. The Gentils. It's so weird. These things, there's hairy monsters that are into metallurgy and it has something to do with Christmas. It's like it's so crazy that this can't be just made up out of nowhere. It's obviously related to something, and I believe it's related. I know when we had Paul from Understanding Conspiracy on the podcast the one day, he told us about all the Nephilim clown things, and he talked about the wild man mythologies. This is clearly has something to do with the wild man.
Oh, it does. Absolutely has to do with the wild man. Like, in fact,
isn't that likely why Santa Claus was wearing green, because he was like a man of the forest?
Yeah,
right?
Well, he was a wild man, basically, essentially. And like when you look at the old depictions of him, he was like a hairy. That's why he's got a big old beard. He was like this hairy depiction of this sort of wild man. In fact, there's other characters like Belsnickel and a few other ones that was also another early depiction of Santa. And so, like, if you look at him, he looks slightly, I don't know if you can see it in these photos, but if you get the book, you'll see it. There's like somewhere he's just like got this big long beard and all this stuff, and he's looking real creepy right here. And he's got all this like, and he's riding a goat, by the way.
Druid-ish, right? Like a druid.
Yeah, why is he riding a goat, guys? Like, because the goats are the children of the goat is the seed of Satan. Okay, that's why he's riding the goat. Okay, and he was a druid because he was practicing witchcraft, guys. Like, he was straight up occultic. Like, this is the idea of this character, and he probably wasn't a real person. I don't know if he was even a single individual character, because this is how demons like embody this ideal, this idolatry, or this ideal of this concept, right? So like the original person may have been Olentzero, and that was it. That was the original Santa. But then later it was adapted by Coca-Cola, making him red, because Coca-Cola is named after not cocaine, but the kukui, okay? And it's named after what cocaine was named after. Cocaine was named after the kukui because it makes you crazy, Okay, and this gets even to crazier details of these large hairy beasts that would kidnap children. And in fact, let me see if I can look this one up. This was adapted by Masonic roots, and that was actually why his costume changed. This is a Masonic traditionary thing that they adapted and was like, oh, let's make him this friendly, jolly, friendly man. Okay, and this is what it all stems from. But there's other companions that allude to allude to stories from the Lesser Keys of Solomon. So for those that don't know, the Lesser Keys of Solomon is like an occultic text, questionably evil, potentially. I wouldn't recommend reading it, but
I think, I honestly, I don't think that it is. I think that you could use the knowledge you'd get from it for evil, but I do think that maybe I think it comes from a true place, honestly.
Well, this is another depiction of Saint Nick here, and I don't know if you know, there's Pete Swarty Pete, and Swarty Pete is actually depicted as a person in blackface. I don't know. I mean, you should look up images of Swarty Pete. Okay, this is another country, and it's pretty hilarious.
Like another one of those. It's too crazy to just completely make up. Like, what is going on with that? I remember when you brought that up last year. I was like, "What? What? How is this Christmas?" It's like these things are so bizarre. I mean, I think that's where the enemy has so much cover, is like that, and that's why so many people say, "Oh, well, Christmas is not pagan," because it's very difficult to pin all this stuff down because it is so bizarre and it comes from so many different places and it comes from so many different regions and pagan religions that are combined together that make a hodgepodge of a mess.
Yes, absolutely. And like the characters that follow him around in the demonic story, he actually, Satan or Santa in some context, has these secondary characters that follow him around that he chains. Okay, Swarty Pete are actually demons. Okay, they are literally demons that Santa supposedly has chained to be his servants. Okay, and in his servants, there's Belschnickel, there's Swarty Pete, there's Kensha Rupich, there's Perchta, and there's Pierre Fruitard, I believe. I can't say it right. Anyways, and there's Krampus, okay? Krampus. And these are all different depictions of different characters that were companions to Saint Nick, okay? Satan Nicholas, who he imprisoned a lot of these were bad, evil things that were demons that he imprisoned to work and serve as his slaves, just like in the book of the Lesser Keys of Solomon.
Yeah,
Lesser Keys of Solomon.
That's definitely Solomon vibes right there.
Yes, and that's why the Masonic things adapted him and put him in a red robe, because the Masons, if you don't know, worship Solomon. They worship him like a king, and so like that's why he was the imprisoner of the demons to literally control them to do his bidding. And in fact, he brought him back to the North Pole where it's freezing, right? And is the North Pole? The North Pole's not even a landmass there, but somehow.
I mean, what we're told now, it's not, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're told now it's not, but like this is the concept that this kind of stems from. And so there was also these elves that he imprisoned. Okay, these elves, which are Elohims, which are demons that are fallen angels, is what he's getting at with this. And when you read the stories of the original elves, they came from the Icelandic sort of tradition. They're called the Yule lads, and it's a very disturbing story. But again, there's this the Yule lads, Yuletide. You'll have Yuletide gay or Yuletide. You've heard that word before.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like the Yule log.
Yeah,
and
the
like
Yule
this.
Log.
Yeah,
and they have Yule on the witch's wheel of like the seasons. Yeah.
Yes. And so like all of that Yule stuff is all from this sort of wicked, disturbing Christmas tale of a woman who is part goat who comes and eats children, by the way. So if you look into the context,
it always has something to do with eating people. And
there
and
she is, eating babies right there. There she is with her goat feet, kidnapping children. Those are children running out of her bag.
Oh my
She's a
gosh.
giant, by the way. This is her depiction. Okay. This is what she looks like.
Yeah, oh my gosh, the picture on the corner right.
It's disturbing.
Resembles something.
Yeah, it does. A lot
on Twitter.
Yeah, it does. What is it? Yeah, that famous painting that we've seen before of the giants that eat their children. Oh, Kronos, is it? Yeah,
Yeah. Kronos, Father Time, which is
yeah.
interesting. I remember that one old kind of what is it, stop animation thing where they have like was it like about was it I can't remember, it's like Frosty the Snowman or it's
Mm.
the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and there's something to do with like Father Time is also involved in that too.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of connections. And here's the other thing. This woman's name is Gorilla. 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 Isn't that getting pretty weird? And
Yeah, that is
we're
getting weird. It's getting
we're
really
getting real
weird.
weird, guys. This is her name is Grilla. Okay? So Grilla, the demon that eats people, eats children and kidnaps children, and has a Yule lads, which are her children that she's kidnapped that she hasn't eaten, that have become her slaves.
But the
There's
Yule
an
lads, but you're saying are the Yule lads the elves that are making the toys?
yes, they're the elves, but they're also kidnapped children that she didn't eat. And there's like depictions of them, and they all have really strange names. Like I believe one of them's called sheep coyote cloud, gully guac, stubby, spoon liquor, pot scraper, bowl liquor. This is the name of the Yule lads, by the way, the original elves. And so this is where we get like all the dwarves names and dopey and all that stuff too. It's derived
Interesting. You
from
know,
these
it's
things.
funny. I was just watching the Rings of
Mm-hmm,
Power,
mm-hmm.
and that's the Tolkien story. It's like the prequel to the Lord of the Rings,
Uh-huh.
and there's 7 dwarf kingdoms. There's 7 rings of the dwarfs. I thought that's pretty interesting. Yeah, and then you have the 7 dwarfs from Snow White. So like,
Oh, it's totally connected. Now, there is a. Let me show you this. Let me see if I can bring this part up real quick. Let's see.
it's also interesting. I was just thinking like you have, like you were saying, if the elves are from the Elohim, elves obviously clearly again, and going back to the Rings of Power, yeah, the elves and the angels are like this. I think that's Tolkien's representative of the angels. But what's interesting is they mention specifically that the elves do not sleep.
Mm,
So what better workforce would be to have people who don't ever sleep, don't ever tire, to make the things.
interesting. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like, they don't ever sleep, and then they're also he sees you when you're sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
I was going
pretty.
to ask you, Brian. I got a question. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Why are the elves always shown to have pointy ears?
Oh man, there's a reason for that, and I would have to. Oh man, it's a complex reason, but it has to do with animal human hybridization. And there's a verse in Leviticus that we'll have to break down in the next episode coming up soon, where we will
Mm-hmm.
talk about the elves entirely, and we'll talk about that topic.
Well, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching. When I was watching the Rings of Power, and we're gonna have to do an episode all about the Tolkien universe. But I thought was really interesting was like that. So when you see a man with pointy ears, it's an elf. What if
Mm-hmm.
the angels really actually have pointy ears? Because it's like I thought it's interesting. Like so, when the elves have pointy ears, like Spock in the Star Trek universe had pointy ears, and obviously he was something different than man. He was like a man, but he was not a man. And so, but he's somebody different when you see him because of the ears.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that maybe the angels in the Bible appear they have other qualities, but it is sort of interesting, like that when the Bible describes men, and then people automatically know it's an angel.
Mm.
And yeah, I just think that's maybe it's the
Well,
ears.
there is it's definitely could be related to that. Because there is a very interesting connection for sure. And I'm going to show you this one. All right.
Well, we know these mythologies don't come from nowhere. They put this stuff in there for some reason, and that's why I ask, because I think that it's like it's so common that they have pointy ears that it means something.
Yes. Okay, so check this out. Now here is another folklore about a boogeyman. Okay, in African culture. Okay, it's called the uh, Tokoloshi. Okay, I believe is how it's pronounced. Tokoloshi.
Did you hit screen share, or you meant?
Oh yeah, here, let me share the screen and I'll show you this one. Okay, so in African folklore, the most well-known boogeyman is called the Tokoloshi, a mischievous dwarf-like water spirit often used scared children in South Africa and Nguni cultures. Okay, so let's see. Described as a small dwarf creature with a large wiener, I think is what that says right there. I don't know if I'm allowed to say certain words on here.
We can say wiener, but we can't say the anatomical correct.
Yeah, become invisible. Yeah, becomes invisible by drinking water and is said to be able to cause illness and even death to its victims. Parents often use the tokonoshi to warn children about their misbehavings. Doesn't that sound a little bit like he sees you while you're sleeping? If you're bad, you know, he's gonna.
That's so weird. That why is it described as having a large thing?
Well,
like, why would it be?
It's Pan. Because it's Pan, bro.
But that's so, you know, it's so weird that all these things do get sexualized, if not for the story of Genesis 6 and the Book of Enoch, and like that, it all has something to do with that. And I believe that that's where, I think that's why a lot of people would say that a lot of these festivals, not Christmas specifically, but maybe the roots of Christmas, these things all have something to do with like fertility things. Almost all of them do.
They absolutely do. And here's the other fascinating part. So a mythical creature in South African folklore that is often described as short, hairy, and stout goblin-like creature that terrorizes people when they sleep. Tokonoshi is associated with witchcraft, mischief, and sexual predation. Okay, so here's the deer. Here's the deal. So size, Tokonoshi is about 1 meter tall, with a large head, big eyes, slender torso. So there's something with this size that's unique, right? Behaviors, powers,
so it's like 3 feet tall,
invisible by drinking water. Okay, yeah. So Tokonoshi is like this small thing, but you want to know what else the Tokonoshi is? Tokonoshi is also the orangutan. So when you see the orangutan, like
the Christmas orangutan.
This is black women scared of orangutan during pictures. Like, what is this? Scared black girl with orangutan inside car. So like when you realize like the orangutan, this is literally what they believe the Tokonoshi is. Okay. But the orangutan was known for kidnapping children. So I have a friend who's from Africa, and he told me about this story about the orangutan when they first put in the zoo where he was in Africa. He says everyone was terrified. He said because he went to the exhibit and all the people were saying the white man put the boogeyman in a cage because they had caught they put orangutan in the zoo exhibit in this place in Africa where he lived. And they said the white man's crazy. Why would you put the boogeyman in a cage? They legit believed that the orangutan was the boogeyman. They believed the orangutan would kidnap your children and comfort you if you were bad. That is the common belief in the African culture. Now, isn't that fascinating? Did you know that the orangutan has an ancestor? Oh yeah, Gigantopithecus, the giant orangutan. Bro, this is the giant orangutan. Here's a depiction of it, like Gigantopithecus, who is a red, hairy giant who would kidnap children, guys, and eat them. This is Gigantopithecus idea. This is the depiction of it, rather, because we don't have anything, but we have skeletal remains of this gigantic orangutan creature that was so massive he would like grab you and eat your children. Okay, so isn't that fascinating?
So that's the jungle. Wait, I'll go back to that picture.
That's the Jungle Book.
I was gonna mention the Jungle Book. That like the weren't these the bad guys in the movie?
I think he was a bad guy. Doesn't he like destroy the building or something?
They were, because the bear was the good guy and the orangutan was the bad. They were bad. It's almost like Planet of the Apes vibes.
Yes,
that's really frightening. Then for sure.
And just, I mean, like, if you just look at an orangutan, by the way, do you think this is like God's creature? Look how sinister this guy looks. He just like looks so sinister. And so the orangutan, I'm going to tell you right now, monkeys probably are descendants. They're like Nephilim with Down syndrome. Okay, guys, I'm just going to tell you right now, they're like Down syndrome Nephilim that have de-evolved. This is the biggest lie in our culture today, is that monkeys evolved from we evolved from monkeys. No, monkeys de-evolved from us, from the Nephilim hybrid offspring, guys.
That's
I'm
what
telling you right
that's
now.
one day Brian and I went down the rabbit hole of that concept. I'm not saying for sure, but it does sort of make sense when you understand that, like, let's just even just like go back. This is kind of might seem like a far stretch, but the story of Atlantis is that um, Poseidon begat this city that was very advanced, and he had 10 twin sons, and then they became the princes of Atlantis. But eventually, they became the divine spirit dwindled, and they became very corrupt, and obviously the giants became wicked. What's interesting is like that if you hear a lot of the stories is that because they had this divine lineage, they tried to keep it in the family. So the more they interbred, the more obviously defects and because obviously they are partly a person, not all divine. So all the defects would become manifest, and then eventually the giants are described as being very. It's like weird because they're like smart, but they're not smart because again they work in metallurgy and all that kinds of things. But
well,
like
they
you
were
have
smart once upon a time, but their knowledge faded and they became animalistic and basically got Down syndrome from inbreeding.
well you have like the Cyclopean architecture, and if you don't know what that means, is Cyclopean means Cyclops has built this crazy advanced architecture. So like obviously you don't go from God's creation of like this beautiful angel to a one-eyed monster unless there's lots of inbreeding. So what would more inbreeding after that mean? And what if it was like the stories of the giants is like we mentioned they ate people. So this is why people hated them and killed them. So what if they drove them far into the darker places on the earth, the jungles, and what happens there? Then obviously their gene pool would get even smaller.
Yep.
And maybe they would resemble things that are not even human anymore. I've long suspected that could be where you get the Bigfoot mythologies from. Yeti, like, could that be a less bastardized version of one of these giants? Like, because they're meant to be like a little more advanced than like an orangutan or
the orangutan's been de-evolved or inbred so much to the point where it's become so deformed, but God for some reason granted it back its status as an animal, is what I believe. Because I think monkeys maybe were God's original creature, and they kind of look like small creatures, like little raccoons basically. But there is a text in the book of Jasher where it talks about it says there's these creatures that come out of the whirlwind. And it says from the middle up or from the middle down, they're like children of men. And from the middle up, they are like bears or like kifas, which the closest word we got for that is kof, which means monkey or gorilla. And so monkey's a kifa in Hebrew. And so it's so like, what do you get when you mix a bear, a monkey, and a man? If not something like a gorilla, if not something like an orangutan.
Isn't it funny? Like there was the South Park with like Al Gore. He was this thread of like the bear pig man.
Yeah, there you go. Bear pig man.
That's sort of weird. I mean, obviously it was meant to be. It sounded like a complete farcical joke, and it probably still could be. But like, it is sort of funny to think. But like, we're just all the things we're describing combined together, and like, what do you get?
Exactly. You get this monstrous thing, and this is what the descendant of these things are. I mean, like, for those who don't know, gorillas weren't around forever. Yeah, they were only discovered like 200 years ago. So like 200 years ago, Jane Goodall and some other people, like, they were all like trying to prove that gorillas were like friendly or that they were people. But before that, in the African region, they were known as a race of angry men. That's what they were known as, a race of angry men that nobody messed with, and they were giant, and they would eat people or kill you. Okay. And so then they became back to this. Over so many years, they started reverting into this animalistic, normal thing. But there's no old depictions of gorillas, guys. Gorillas are fairly new creatures. Just a heads up. There's not a whole lot of old, depictions of it. That's why people try to put this idea that like gorillas, we evolved from them. Like, oh, that's what that foolish idea comes from. It's the distortion of genetics of humans and animals being hybridized by Nephilim, which created this race of beings that are what essentially probably akin to the orcs in some regard, if we really talk about it.
Oh yeah, what's interesting when we talk about it before that. So in ancient Egypt, they mummified like baboons and things like that. So obviously, baboons is that kind of just a offshoot of primates.
Yep, exactly. And in fact, there's actually baboons that somebody that was a scientist friend of mine I was just talking to a little bit ago told me some very fascinating thing, that they took baboons and they started to selectively breed them. And I haven't looked up the data on this very much, but I got to look into it. But apparently, after some selective breeding, all of a sudden these bright colors started appearing in the baboons, like rainbowy, crazy colors started appearing by selective breeding. And they were like, whoa, this is crazy, because baboons have a blue butt. Some of them do. I don't know if you guys know.
Yeah,
like
really
bright blue butt.
Weird.
Really weird, right? Okay, so they started getting some like selective breeding. There's baboons that don't have the blue butt too, okay? There's different kinds of baboons. And there's some that when they selectively bred them, it started bringing in these weird rainbow colors just started appearing in the baboons or in the animals they were doing this breeding with. So here's the fascinating part. I don't know if you know this, but there is a condition in Asian genetics where there's an expression, you've got a blue butt. He's a blue butt. You ever heard that expression?
I've heard of blue bloods. I've heard of blue
no,
blood.
Blue butt means you're ignorant in the Japanese culture. Oh, your butt's still blue. It means you don't know anything. Because babies in Asian cultures are oftentimes born with a condition where your butt is blue. Did you know that? Isn't that fascinating? There is babies that are born with a condition where their butt comes out blue, and over time the blue butt fades away. But as a child, you can, and so there's an expression meaning if you've got a blue butt, you're still young. You still don't know. You still don't understand. Oh, he's a blue butt. So that's literally where this stems from. But isn't that fascinating that from certain types of cultural things, we get these weird cultural anomalies of color that similarly line up with baboons having blue butts? Isn't that fascinating?
What's interesting is I remember as a kid, and I know this is not accurate now, but people would say your blood is blue when it's in your body, and when it's exposed to oxygen, it becomes red. But obviously, it's because some of your veins in your arms look blue, but it's not the blood that's blue. The blood is red inside your body. There's nothing to it. Obviously, your blood, unless you have oxygen in your blood, you're not going to be alive. Anyway, so, no, but that is interesting. So yeah, like this is probably the most bizarre Christmas episode I think you could probably imagine. Do you guys still want to celebrate Christmas after all this?
Just wait. There's more, guys. I'm gonna say let's do a little bit more, because this is a little bit fascinating. Let's talk about the reindeer.
I was about to say, are you going to get into the demonic reindeer?
Yeah, so this is from this occultic book. I forget the name. It's the Book of Demonology, but he drew all these different demons. This is the demon Furfur. Okay, it comes from the term Furcifer. Who's that sound like? Oh yeah,
Furcifer. Are you serious?
Furcifer. Yes,
that sounds like somebody saying Lucifer with a lisp.
Sure does. And in fact, there's a TV show called what's that one on Amazon Prime where there's like the devil, the angel, and the friends, and they're like friends and they're battling. I forget what it is. It's like something. I've never heard of that. I don't Omega think I've heard of that. Or something.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not positive which one you're talking about, but I think I know.
Yeah, there's a television show talks about it. There's a character in it that's named Furfur. Okay, they actually literally have a character named after this demon, Furcifer. Okay, and he's like, I think he's a gay guy in the thing. They all seem kind of gay in the show, I think. But anyways, so Furfur, this is where we get the term furry, guys. Furries. It comes from Furfur. Okay, the dressing up where you dress up as an animal-human hybrid thing. Okay, this is actually what Aleister Crowley called himself. What did Aleister Crowley call himself again? Yeah, the head.
He was a Therion. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The head. He was called the Master Therion. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. The Master Therion. And all these people that are furries these days refer to themselves now as Therions. Did you know that? That's a pretty common term.
I did not know that. But yeah, obviously There's nothing new under the sun.
No, yeah. So what is this culture of furry humans, humanoid-esque animal-human hybrid things? That's what you're embracing. You're embracing the animal-human hybridization. You know, when you put on the furry outfit that you were an animal, but you're human-esque in nature, like that's the depiction that's what the Nephilim were making. You guys are parading around. There's children parading around these fur suits, these little furry suits, thinking that they're like just, oh, it's really cool. No, you are parading around in the demonic perversion genetics that the angels were doing as a middle finger to the Lord. That's what you're parading around in. And you're celebrating that middle finger that they put up to God, saying, oh, we're going to pervert your perfect genetics. We're going to pervert it. That's what it is. Like even Mickey Mouse falls into this category, guys. What is it, Mickey Mouse? He's a mouse animal and a humanoid creature. He's a Therion.
And why does he wear white gloves?
Yeah, because he's a Freemason Therion. It's like,
because you know who else wears white gloves is the people in those secret clubs.
Yeah, so does Santa Claus wear white gloves.
He does wear white gloves as well. And also the furries. I mean, like I said, you don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole because obviously it's gross. But yeah, it's always about, again, like I said, if all these pagan festivals are about fertility things, the furry thing is not about just people dressing up like things. It's about like sexual perversion.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, this is not a reach. That's what it's about. So the fact that it could be related to these kinds of sexual perversions that literally caused God to destroy the earth with the flood, it's not a far stretch.
No, this is a wild episode, by the way, guys. This is great. We're just unleashing all of it.
This was a holiday special if I've ever had one. But yeah,
there's so much in this. There's like two more things I want to mention though, and then we'll be done. But the thing is, so like when it comes to this, there is the god that's also Saturnalia and Cernunnos. Okay, Cernunnos. And Cernunnos is depicted with the antler horns. And Furfur, by the way, Cernunnos flies. Okay, Furfur flies. Furfur has a red glowing tail. Okay, Rudolph has a red glowing nose. Okay, so Furfur flies, Rudolph flies. Like it's literally all the same characteristics. They just mix it around. Like they move the glowing red tail to his glowing red nose. That's literally what they did with Rudolph. But I think his tail was maybe it was like it just says glowing red, but it alludes to this.
It would be weird to follow like a tail, so they probably said, "This is gonna be harder to sell. It's a nose because the nose on the front, not on the back."
Yeah, well, it's also
unless you're following something else.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just like, okay, well, that's literally what's going on here. And so this is why you see this depiction of the flying reindeer. Now, the rest of the reindeer, Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen and Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen. Okay, Donner and Blitzen is the thunder and lightning, by the way. And it's Donder, I think is how you say it. Yeah, Donder and Blixen is the proper way to say thunder and lightning. It's the Greek god. It's Zeus, dude. Donner and Blitzen. It's literally thunder and lightning.
Well, that fits as well that a lot of depictions of Santa Claus, like in the Norse region, Scandinavia, they depict him almost exactly like Odin.
Yes.
Or Thor. So in the original mythologies of Thor and Odin, that Thor flies, but he didn't fly like with the magic hammer back in the day. He flew in a like chariot looking thing, and he was pulled by two goats. So he flew with goats, not with his hammer. So like you imagine that's pretty close. Imagine the long beard and the garb, like what you would see like the wild man Santa looking, and then being pulled in like a sleigh like thing by animals.
That, and by goats specifically, because the goats are the children of Satan again. That's what the goat
right. And
illusion
you said
is.
Like originally they showed the druid looking Santa riding the goat.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like so obvious that this is the connection to it. And so then we've got also Cupid, who's eroticus and Eros, and it's the god of Eros in the Greek gods, Comet.
The Valentine's mythology, a lot of people believe that Cupid is Tammuz.
Yeah,
so Tammuz would be the son of Semiramis and Nimrod.
Yes.
And so Tammuz is basically like
Mm-mm.
what the mythologies would say is like a reincarnation of Nimrod. So you might as well say that that is Nimrod.
We might do a whole episode on Valentine's Day, though. By the way, side note, guys.
Yeah. That's a weird one. That's a weird one. Yeah, for sure.
And then we've got Comet, which is a falling star, right? Which is a fallen angel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there is literally, which is the primary characteristics of like the Satan falling to the ground. That's like one of the things names. All right. And so the original fallen star is Satan or hell or Hades, right? So it's probably Hades. And so we've got Vixen, who is described as a sexual person. A vixen is a fox, right?
Yeah, a vixen is always. Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone knows what a vixen is. Well, I think people know what vixens are, but yeah, I never really broke down the names of the reindeer, but yeah, they all do have pretty weird connections, right?
Yes, it does. So I just wrote these down, and this is all the way, by the way, in my book. If you guys want to get it, I wrote all this stuff in here. So we've got Dasher is the Scandinavian root dash, meaning to beat or to strike suddenly and violently. Connection this reindeer to the Greek god of war, Ares. Okay, that's a stretch a little bit, but it's when you realize, you're like, okay, it's got to mean something. Dancer,
dashing through the snow.
Yeah, dashing through and you got Dasher. I don't know. It's pretty interesting.
I mean, obviously, what we would say Englishly would be like trampling something, right?
Yeah,
dashing it.
Yeah, exactly, destroying it. So dancer, the Greek god festivities and music is Dionysus, is generally associated with dancing. So Dionysus is literally dancer. Prancer, prancing meaning to spring from the hind legs, which is what to prance means, and it is typically applied to describe horses, linking this reindeer to Poseidon, the Greek god of horses. So Poseidon's known as the god of horses. That's why you see him like in the water with horses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Believe it or not, it's once again, these are kind of like the too weird to not be true. Is that why would the god associated with water be represented by a horse?
I don't know. It's so strange.
But no, that's true. Yeah, it's definitely true. I've looked that up. Yeah, Poseidon is often associated with horses.
Yeah. So these are just the reindeers, guys. Like all of it is like has a cultic mirroring type of stuff, and there's things and characteristics of this stuff that these people are writing some of these stories. They're not fully aware what they're writing when they're writing them. They're channeling these things, and so obviously there's a little bit of cultural mishap or misconstrued perspective that happens when you're channeling messages from demons. So, and then there's the own personal perspective that gets led into this concept, right? And so like there's a little bit of distortion that just happens throughout time, and that little bit of distortion, a little bit of distortion, a little bit more distortion, and it just keeps evolving slowly. That's why it's e pluribus unum, from many one, from many gods one, from many stories one. They're all the same thing. It's just a little bit of a perversion, distortion here, and here. Just like your Christmas tree with your star topper. Because what are the stars again, JT? Star, what does star mean?
The stars are the angels.
Yes, the stars are the angels in the Bible. And the word star is actually, it's interchangeable in the context, because they believe that the stars above that we saw were angels looking down on us. And it's quite possible that they are still to this day. In fact, if you looked at a star up close, I've looked at one in one of those P90 cameras. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you what, it looks pretty weird.
Yeah, it's pretty trippy looking. It's like, yeah, so
it's like a pool of water.
The bad kings in the Bible mentioned specifically, you actually even go back to the in that Colossians chapter 2, it mentions that worshiping angels, worshiping the elemental spirits. And so in the book of Kings and Chronicles, it mentions more than one time that the bad kings of Israel worship the whole heavenly host. So the morning stars shouted for joy when God laid the foundations of the earth. Mentions those were the sons of God. The stars are the angels. So worshiping false gods are worshiping angels. So it's all the same thing.
And the star sigil, by the way, the pentagram it's a demonic sigil, and it's how you write a demon's name. You don't write his name with words. You write it with symbols, and those little star sigils and all that stuff is literally how you write a demon's name. This sigil that's on top of Baphomet's head, it's above Baphomet here, and it's on his forehead here. It's the same star sigil. It doesn't matter. People are like, oh, but it's upside down. Oh, but it's right side up. Oh, so if it's upside down, it's bad. But if it's right side up, it's good. No, fool. It's the same thing. Do you think that they care? The demon doesn't care what orientation you write its name. You write its name, you write it. That's how the demon shows up. There is no upside down, right side up. Okay, just your eyes don't perceive up and down. This is light and dark. This is the Luciferian Illuminati stuff. That's why Illuminati was an anagram, or what, I forget the word, where if you flipped it, it still kind of looks like Illuminati, or if you spell it the other way, like they do this kind of stuff in everything because it's the same thing. You're channeling the same thing.
Also, what's the alternative to putting a star on the top of your tree, Brian?
An angel.
put an angel up there. So if you said we're reaching, bro, well, yeah, you could actually literally put an angel up there if that's if the star is too subtle for you.
Yeah, the star demonic sigil is there. You can just put its physical representation. And then there's another thing that I don't know, that there's festivities and stuff of mistletoe, which was an occultic practice. You can see all these druids in old pictures cutting mistletoe down for their seance ritual stuff that they would do.
Yeah, again, fertility things. And isn't it true?
It's a poison.
I only say this because I saw I think it was Batman Returns, the old Michael Keaton movie, that I think Catwoman tells Bruce Wayne that mistletoe is poisonous if you eat it. So obviously it's some kind of like it's like it's poison, and so obviously it has something to do with fertility.
Yes, and then there's the pine cones, which are also being held by the Anunnaki that hold the pine cones in their hand, which represents the pineal gland and all that stuff, and the pine cone stuff that you get in Christmas. Here's some more druids doing some druidic stuff. Okay, so all of this is connected to like satanic roots of things. And there's a whole other subject of Saturnalia, or the festivities.
Yeah, where they gave out presents on Saturnalia, and Saturnalia was I think it was between, was it December 17th and I think the 23rd, I believe.
Yeah, and it was a perverted, and like, dude, I've got depictions in here, and a lot of it's got pedophilia stuff in it that's like from old drawings that are very disturbing
stuff.
The very disturbing stuff. And so like when you see that what Saturnalia was really about, there's like animals, there's children, all in this weird party of sexuality and perversion. And so when you see this, you're like in these old drawings, you're like in depictions and reliefs. These are reliefs, guys, that are like on the side of buildings, and people are just like, oh yeah, let's just leave that up there. Or like, that's acceptable. Like that's normal. Like, dude, it is so disturbing. It is so disturbing. And like all of this, and the gifts that they were giving were gifts that were like sexual perversion.
They were given idols
and idols,
and they were giving idols out.
Yes. And so all of this points to the understanding of this Christmas origin being connected to Nephilim hybridization, connected to animal-human hybrid mixing, perversions of demons and genetics, and a middle finger to the Lord. And then today we've turned it into a moment of greed and selfishness and wickedness, right? And we've turned this into all this wicked, like, not about love, guys, but yet you can make it love, though. We can make it about your family and love, but it's origins so that you're not ignorant, so that you're not like a foolish person participating in something. It says to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves, right? So it is good to know the origins, because you can share this information. You can get this book, give it to your family. They're going to be like, what the heck am I reading? They're going to be like,
be a nice stocking stuffer.
Yeah, exactly. Be like, yeah, just stick it in there and just be like, hey, here you go, family. Like, dude, this is, when you understand this truth, you understand what's going on. It's very eye-opening to the reality of what we're really dealing with and what's going on in our culture today. And it's just an eye-opening reminder that Satan rules the world, guys, and he's deceiving many people around us every day, all the time. And we need to be vigilant. We need to wake up to the truth that we live in a world of darkness, as ignorant as we like to pretend to be, but there is a ton of wickedness around you all the time, and you need to be aware of that. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. There's so much weirdness going on with that. And I want to take it back one thing to, again, not to give cover for people who want to celebrate Christmas, but I learned this a couple years ago, and I made a video about it last year. And I thought was really interesting is like why Christmas is celebrated when it is to the pagans. So it's kind of like they could celebrate this weird crap anytime they wanted to. But why did they pick December 25th? Here's why.
Hmm.
And this is why again you get into like the zeitgeist stuff where people try to say that Jesus is just another sun god. I think the story that's written in the sky, the clock that's been put in place above us by God, is the story of the story of his son that came to die for us. And I'm going to tell you it right now. So what's very interesting is that I believe that the sun is a representation of Jesus, right? I believe the moon is actually a representation of his church. It's like there's kind of like there's the divine female, which is usually represented with the moon, and then the male. So like the church marries, God, marries Jesus at the end. What's really interesting is on the winter solstice is the mythologies is the sun dies on the winter solstice. And where does it go? So it goes down to its lowest point, and they say it hangs on the Southern Cross, like the constellation. That's where it stays. And it stays there for 3 days. So from the 21st to the 25th, basically, like, it's 3 days, 3 nights, whatever. And then on the 25th, it starts to rise again. And so I thought, you know what? It's sort of interesting that works out that way, where it's like that we celebrate the birth of Jesus on September or December 25th. But again, as biblically, I would say that's definitely not his birthday, because there's stories about that the shepherds slept outside in that area of the world. It would have been way too cold to sleep outside. The Romans had the people pay their taxes at that time to travel. They would not have been traveling during the winter during that time, because it would have been very difficult to travel. Knowing that based on Matthew 24, it says, if this tribulation comes during the wintertime, pray it doesn't, because it would be difficult to travel. So those two clues give you that it was not December 25th. I believe it was September 11th, and we can get into that another day. But what's really interesting is that it's not his birth that's being celebrated, but it could be his resurrection, which again would give you a reason to celebrate Jesus that day, but you could celebrate Jesus every day. I mean, I think as a Christian, we don't ever get tired of talking about what God did for us, and that he rose again, and that he's alive. I think that's really cool. So,
Yeah.
that being said, I think that it's like the enemy can try to pervert days and seasons and things to make it about him, but God created everything, right? And it's only the enemy that's thrown in all this confusion to say, oh, well, that's really about him. And you're like, but I do believe that's why, as we started the podcast about walking in faith, it's like, but I know that Jesus is on the throne, and I know that everything is about him. So I'm not going to let the enemy take out my day, when every day is the day of our Lord. The day of the day is day of salvation. I'm going to celebrate him every day, including that day. And it means like that you take what you would, if you feel any conviction about any of the things you've heard and like any of the traditions, like some people think about trees and stars and weird stuff, like take that to the Lord. If you feel convicted about that, then obviously you know what to do about that. But if you don't feel convicted, and you feel the goodness of your heart of why you're celebrating Jesus, well, praise
love
God.
people. Yeah,
Tell
love people.
Use this opportunity to show how much you love God by showing it by loving them in this time. And the one message in Christmas that's obviously gets lost is it's better to give than to receive. And that's what God has taught us. So if you take that and use that message this season, do that all the time. But I mean, obviously you can show it specifically now and show people a better way, and not giving, like not getting things and hoarding things and materialism. Show them giving, showing love, showing people attention, and that kind of thing.
Yep, absolutely. And so I think that it's important to love the Lord and love the people around you more than anything, guys. And so, like, This is all interesting stuff, guys. This is interesting, fun things, but it doesn't mean like to condemn anybody about any of this. And like, share this and get this knowledge in your head. And then you can bring up some interesting facts at Christmas next year and be like, hey, did you know that Satan might be Santa? Like, actually, it stems from this thing in the Bible. They're called Nephilim. I don't know. It seems a little weird, Goat Man looks a whole lot like Baphomet. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. But like when you realize all of that's connected, you realize that the giants, the hybridization, and all this, it's all just perversions. They're just trying to pervert the truth, guys. Don't be ignorant. Be wise. Love people, though, above all else, guys. If there's any message to give, like, study this for fun, not because it's like, some way to, like, find truth to, like, condemn other people or something.
Well, finding truth is important, but yeah, like obviously, like we know, like we're not Gnostics, so we search the truth, and ultimately, like your search for truth could stop at Jesus is Lord, and He died for you. But so that's why we don't use these facts or at least hard evidence to condemn people or to beat them over the head with them. Like, yeah, you just. Again, we're supposed to, I think as Christians, I remember Vitaly actually did a very recently, Alpha Talks did a really good video recently about like that we need to be, I think when Jesus says be as wise as serpents, is like, I think it's interesting like to know more about the world you live in and understand it. So like you can, not so you can use it against people, but you can relate and you can understand things and you can explain it to them in ways they can understand. And then you can share the gospel with them because you're not some legalistic weirdo. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't see, don't touch, remember that. Like, it's just like, this is truth. This is interesting. This is fascinating. This is history. Share it, and love people and open their eyes to that, yeah, you're living in a satanic world ran by a bunch of demons, like for reals. You're like living in it, and don't be blind to it. Don't be ignorant to it, but above all, love everybody through it, because that's the only way you're going to bring people out of it is love.
Yeah,
like
we're
angry
we're
Christians
in this
don't do
place.
anything.
We're not of it.
Yeah. Yep. That's it, guys. So thanks for joining us on today's Ancient Angels, where there's more, guys. There's so much more we're going to break down, and oh yeah, this is going to be fun.